Hey everyone, this is the third and final part to my Xiaolin Showdown retrospective, where I record every win and loss throughout the show. So check those out first if you're new here, and let's jump right in to episode 40. So to quickly summarize where we are in the series, Omi just teamed up with Chase Young because he swore his allegiance to evil when he left the Yin Yang world and got turned into a cat, ushering in the end of the world. Back at the temple, we see Jack has become a goody two-shoes with a sweater vest and slicked back hair because he brought the reversing mirror into the Yin Yang world, which normally leaves you with only your evil spirits, like we saw with Omi initially, but Jack leaves with only his good, and it's really funny to see. Like, he brings Master Feng his morning tea, making Dojo jealous, and I love that new Jack makes even Master Feng uncomfortable with how kind he is. Like, it's just creepy. On top of the end of the world, Omi being taken away and Wuya regaining her form, there's these monsters called Chi creatures that are guardians of the Chi from the Yin Yang world, who hunt down the warriors and won't rest until they've reclaimed their missing Chi. Sure, why not? Anything else we want to add to this situation? Can it get any worse? Good Jack decides to go to the Yin Yang world and collect everyone's Chi, even though returning will make him evil again. He tells them to remember him for who he is in this moment and not who he'll become, and it's really interesting, because I think a big reason why so many people gravitate towards Jack Spicer as a character is because he often comes off as more misguided than evil. Like, he's goofy and crude, but more insecure than evil, and even though this is a twisted representation of Jack, I still get the feeling a core of Jack Spicer's character is still here, helping the Shaolin warriors. With the rest of the monks restored to their true selves and Jack evil once again, we find ourselves in a Xiaolin showdown between the apprentices and the new forces of evil. Raimundo says we're just gonna play soccer, fuck it, we ball, and he even says it's a 4-on-4 and Omi's on our team, which is really funny to me. Like, we can just draft people in Xiaolin showdowns now? Also, referring to this game as Xiaolin Soccer is kind of funny, because there's a movie called Xiaolin Soccer that came out in 2001, and it's exactly as cool as you think it would be. Like, look at this. As I've said many times on this channel, I'm a big sports fan, and this showdown is no exception. It looks sick. Like, look at this header by Chase. Why is he trying to conquer the world? He should be conquering the Premier League. We see Cat Omi and Dragon Chase get into this martial arts pursuit, and Omi evades Chase by catching him off guard.
Horse skipping pebble! Cafe fiddle! Duck flipping burgers! Sparrow eating hot dog!
Sparrow eating hot dog?
Chase Young insisted the showdown had no Shengon Wu, so the warriors used their element powers, which are kinda like built-in Shengon Wu. Like, Kimiko kicks the ball with fire, which, may I remind you, is Dojo, scorching into the back of the goal. And the showdown ends with the monks using their Dragon X Kume team formation, becoming an unstoppable force. Like, they ball together and break through Chase's teammates, even smashing through a tank. Why is there a tank on the field? They kick Chase into their goal as he's holding onto the ball, which is kinda crazy. Like, that's gotta be at least a yellow card or something. But yeah, the warriors win the showdown and Omi's restored to his human form. Omi apologizes for not using the answers for how to solve evil to save the day before, questioning just how good of a person he actually is. Now, if Chase wanted to truly convert Omi to evil, the one thing he shouldn't do here is step in and say, hey, you know how I told you not to peek at the key to stop being evil? Well, what you saw was actually a twisted evil version because of my reversing mirror. So if Omi broke his word, he would have destroyed good, not evil. It's a cool plot point to reveal, and Omi even says, wow, maybe the good in you is stronger than you think. But for me, I'm kinda like, how is there more evil in Omi than meets the eye? If he stuck to his morals of honor, which ended up saving the world, like, don't reveal that unless you've just given up completely on converting him to evil, Chase. You're showing Omi he was good and to keep being good. Idiot. The ongoing plot of the apprentice promoted to Wudai warrior concludes here, and the promoted warrior turns out to be everyone, which they justify by saying it was a promotion they could only achieve when they rose to the challenge of acting as one. And seeing how they united to win the soccer game, it totally makes sense here. The last thing I'll say here is it's very funny that the fate of the world was staked on a soccer game. Like, in this universe, to protect the fate of the world, you'll need to work not only on martial arts, but on your foot skills and jump shot. So let's move on. Episode 41. We return to a slightly more episodic format here, with a creepy old lady wandering around singing. This is an omen that the bird of paradise is nearby, a legendary bird that'll give the holder some amazing powers. So the warriors go on a quest to find it. They have no Shengon Wu to bring with them, but only a leaf that'll act as a compass to guide them through the land of nowhere, which happens to be part of Chase Young's domain. Chase Young watches through this orb, which makes it pretty clear this episode is a big Wizard of Oz parody. I don't think I would have come to this conclusion if I didn't see this episode just after watching The Wizard of Oz for the first time, but I don't really see this mentioned anywhere, so maybe it's just all in my head, I don't know. Along the way, they save this wandering old lady who falls into a river, allowing Jack to run off with the compass leaf thing, and Raimundo's sad that they allowed Jack to escape, but Omi reassures him his heart was in the right place by saving the old lady. Later, they fight these fire-breathing squirrels, which as we already know are Omi's biggest fear, arguably his biggest rival in the whole show, but Omi eventually faces his fear, and together they defeat the fire-breathing squirrels, saving Jack Spicer and reclaiming their compass leaf from Jack. They eventually find this parrot they believe is the bird of paradise, and Chase Young summons this zombie dragon to fight the warriors. This bony zombie dragon ends up grabbing the old lady, so the monks showcase their new Wu-Dai team combo, turning into these shadowy figures with big colorful edges and outlines, and I gotta say they're pretty cool, and got like just the right amount of edge. They kinda look like designs you'd see on early Newgrounds or something. I don't know how to describe it, but I like it. While this fight to save the old lady happens, Jack flies off with a parrot they all presumed was the bird of paradise, but it actually turns out this old lady who was wandering around throughout the episode was the real bird of paradise all along. We see her transform into this big, pink, elegant bird and bestows upon them the greatest powers of all, telling them the qualities they already had deep inside of them, just like the Wizard of Oz. So the warriors learn to remain cautious and to see with their minds and not just their eyes. It is interesting this episode has no Shengon Wu and no Showdown, so there's nothing I can really add to the sheets for this one, but this is an episode I always remember as the Wizard of Oz parody. I don't know if I would have connected it if it wasn't fresh in my head back then. But I've always enjoyed this episode a lot, so let's move on. Episode 42 starts with the monks training against my goat, the sweet baby among us, and eventually the Moby Morpher is revealed, a Shengon Wu that allows the user to shift their shape and size, even allowing them to take on the form of their enemy. The Shengon Wu's in this volcano, and Chase has no interest in the Shengon Wu, so we see Wuya easily defeat all the boys and get into a showdown against Kimiko.
Well, I've got no problem kicking old hag butt.
Well, come and get it.
Once again, no comment. The challenge is to avoid the meteor shower, and they both wager a yin/yang yo-yo, which is really interesting, because Kimiko turns evil, and Wuya, well...
If I win, I'm opening a home for birds without nests.
Kimiko ends up grabbing the Morpher and winning the showdown, and the parrot from the last episode steals a bunch of Shengon Wu and flies off. This is revealed to be no ordinary parrot, but the Yin Ying bird, which means an old acquaintance of Chase, Hannibal Roy, is nearby. The Xiaolin monks, along with Jack, end up in the Yin Yang world once more to search for Hannibal Roy, and I guess it's kinda like a parody of Hannibal Lecter, the imprisoned serial killer from Silence of the Lambs. Only instead of being in a prison, Hannibal Roy is some kind of being, imprisoned in the yin-yang world. We learn Hannibal Bean is what turned Chase Young evil, exploiting Chase Young's desire to become the greatest, and exposed Chase Young to the evil Halen powers to surpass Monk Guan, that monk we met last season who betrayed them by trading Dojo for his spear before saving them at the end of that episode. So the monks try to fight Hannibal Bean, who easily fends off their attacks and confuses everyone by morphing into the others. The monks escape the yin-yang world, where they're reunited with Chase Young, who tries to destroy Clay for some reason. As it turns out, Hannibal Bean joined the monks as they escaped, using the Moby Morpher to disguise himself as Clay, and the monks try to stop Chase Young from attacking their friend, allowing Hannibal Bean to escape.
Sounds like end of the world time. Again, no. It is far worse than that.
Okay, what's worse than the end of the world? Like, what could possibly be worse? I'm almost getting desensitized to the end of the world being near, but let's see how this pans out in the next episode.
Their evil forces could mean the end of the world.
Where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, previously on Xiaolin Showdown.
Episode 43. The monks celebrate the Chinese New Year, opening gifts from their families, and Omi's sad because he doesn't have a family like the other warriors. Master Feng urges Omi to go on a quest to find where he belongs, and the gang travels, eventually finding a village of people with yellow skin just like Omi. On the outskirts of this town, they find this kind of strange old couple who live on a dirty farm, finally revealing Omi's last name, which is Crud. They recollect that Omi must have gone missing when they accidentally packed him into a shipment of grapefruits they were selling, which is so sad. We see Omi help with all the chores around the farm for his old sickly parents and is pressured to stay and help care for them full time. And I will say, Omi leaving the temple because he needs to care for his old sick parents is a lot more of a valid reason than leaving the temple to join evil because he promised Chase Young he would. Chase shows up to warn Omi his friends are in danger, so Omi returns to the temple and gets into a showdown against his own mother. She uses the Orbitornami, but Omi's new element powers allow him to turn the water against her, having her fall to her doom. As she hits the ground, her head snaps off, revealing she was a robot this whole time. Jack built these robots, which Hannibal used the Moby Morpher on, thus creating a full town of Omi-likes, and even though Omi wins, it's hard to say who loses. Like, do I give it to Omi's mom? Do I give it to Jack because he made the robot? In my heart of hearts, I'm feeling this is a loss for Jack and Hannibal, since they're both behind this plan. And the episode ends on a really sweet note, with Master Feng telling Omi he's finally found where he belongs, despite returning to the temple, because this is his family. How sweet. Overall, it's a fine episode, and I love that they address Omi's backstory more and what challenges he faces. So let's move on. Episode 44. The warriors are sent on a quest to find their Wudai weapons and obtain the treasure of the Blind Swordsman. So we get another quest episode like the Wizard of Oz episode, but this has more of a Western theme. On their journey, they get surrounded by rattlesnakes, revealing the blade of Nebula for Raimundo. Then they enter a haunted western canteen and fight what I presume is the spirit of an old cowboy in this ghost town who climbs out of a painting. And I guess no one's scared they've encountered a real ghost here, but it's kinda just occurred to me they're constantly fighting Wuya, so never mind. This gives Kimiko the Arrow Sparrow, and they move on to the Cactus Creek and fight a bunch of living cactus monsters, which look kinda sick. The Wudai weapon reveals itself here as a boomerang for clay called the Big Bang Meteor Ring, giving everyone but Omi their own Wudai weapon. Omi finally finds his Wudai weapon later, which is just a weird little stick that gets sad when Omi insults it. Omi notes how it's odd this weapon isn't guarded, like how the other weapons were guarded by snakes and cactus monsters. But Omi taking the stick out of the wall causes the cave to collapse, leading them to the treasure of the Blind Swordsman. In the tomb of the Blind Swordsman, they encounter a blind old man who tells them he'll give up the treasure if they can defeat him in combat, and they only have 5 moves to do so.
But I cannot fight you. You're old and blind.
Omi tricks the old man, pretending he's behind him, winning the blind man's treasure, which is just an empty box. Jack and Wuya show up and look at Wuya's fit. I know they're on a ranch, but she's dressing. They take the Shengon Wu and the old man, but leave the empty treasure chest, which is perceived to be pretty useless. The warriors eventually open the treasure of the Blind Swordsman, revealing this genie-like spirit, the actual Blind Swordsman, who teaches the warriors to use their new weapons by opening their minds. Omi's little staff thing is actually an ice stick that can turn into any weapon at will, which is pretty cool, like he's just got an ice mace now if he wants. Clay's Big Bang Meteor Ring is a boomerang that can cut through mountains, not the most earthy weapon like his earth gauntlets he made, but the fact they cut through earth ties it together pretty well. Kimiko's Arrow Sparrow summons these exploding firebirds, and Raimundo has the Blade of the Nebula, which is pretty similar to the Sword of the Storm, even name-wise it's like kinda just a version 2. The treasure chest summons these flying horses, allowing the warriors to catch up to Jack's airship, and they use their new weapons to take down Jack's robots. While this is happening, the old swordsman guard gets into a showdown trio against Jack and Wuya, who use their Sword of Thunderbolt and Silk Spinner against his Mantis Flip Coin. Jack shoots a lightning bolt at the old man, who runs on top of it and hits Jack. Wuya shoots a silk spinner at him, and he whips it up like ramen noodles, which is pretty sick. Jack and Wuya then position themselves on opposite sides of the old man, taking advantage of his blindness, but he uses the Mantis Flip Coin to flip away, causing Jack and Wuya to shoot each other, knocking them off, and giving the Blind Swordsman a win this season. I don't recall a Xiaolin Showdown only involving Jack as one of the 5 main characters before, which makes this really interesting in that regard. Monk Guan and Chase Young had a showdown last season, but that was more of a showdown hold the Xiaolin. Omi asks the old man how he can win without his vision, and he's like, dude, use your mind. The answers are in your mind. Where have you been this episode? I think the episode does a good job showing off the new weapons the characters get, and the archetype of a blind fighter feels very much up the alley of a Xiaolin Showdown plot. Like, it's very mental and psychological, with a moral about using your mind to fight. The episode ends with Hannibal Bean stealing the blind man's treasure, which was left behind during this showdown on the airship, and we know big bad things are gonna happen. But I don't know, I'm just not threatened that much by this little bean we don't even know that much about. Chase seemed pretty ominous, especially because of how many times he let the others win. Like, he was that confident. But we get this Southern gentleman mighty bean, like, you are a toy. Let's just move on. Episode 45. This episode starts with Wuya plotting how she can regain her powers, and it turns out a new Shengon Wu is on the horizon, the Rio Reverso, which can revert any object to its original form. I thought Wuya would want this Shengon Wu to turn herself back to her original form, but I think she just wanted this as a powerful Shengon Wu to help her overtake Chase. This begs the question, what would happen if you use this on a human, or on someone like Omi? Would he just revert back to a marble or an egg or something? As the warriors and Jack show up to the Rio Reverso, Wuya uses the Ruby of Ramses to control Jack as a human wrecking ball, taking everyone out and letting Jack fly away with the Shengon Wu. Wuya knows this will be easy enough to retrieve from Jack later, and this is kinda hard to score, cause like, Jack physically wins and flies off with the Shengon Wu, but this was done by Wuya according to her plan. So I'm gonna score this as a win for Wuya and a loss for the Xiaolin warriors, and I'll leave it as neutral for Jack. Back at the Xiaolin temple, Master Feng tells the warriors success is predicated on how you bounce back from a failure, and it's the journey, not the destination and stuff. This angers Raimundo, who storms off to reclaim his lost Shengon Wu from Jack. Meanwhile, we see in Jack's lair, he's messing around with the Rio Reverso, answering my question from before because he uses it on a chicken, which reverts back into an egg. And then we see the Yes Bot leaking oil, which Jack uses the Rio Reverso on, reverting the oil back to its original form, a dinosaur. So I watched this scene of the episode like 3 times because I was so confused. Like, I thought there was something I was missing. Why is this oil turning into a dinosaur? Have I lost my damn mind? And then I put together, oh, they're like making a fossil fuel reference. It's pretty funny, but it seems to be more of a myth that crude oil comes from dinosaur remains. Like, it'd be more accurate if the oil reverted into plankton and marine plants or something, but that would be pretty boring, you know? So Jack begins his evil plan of turning his robot's oil into a dinosaur army, while Wuya and Raimundo are both planning their break-ins, all while Chase Young watches over Wuya's imminent betrayal. Raimundo breaks in, and we're introduced to Jack's main dinosaur trio.
Meet my crack security team, Dino Dude, Dino Dash, and Dino Gal. Aren't they dino cute?
The Xiaolin monks break in, and Jack summons his dinosaur army, who get distracted and escape when they see a butterfly flying around outside the lair. As Jack fights the monks, Wuya swoops in and steals the Rio Reverso, continuing to use Jack as a wrecking ball with the Ruby of Ramses. Later, we see Wuya on a giant oil rig, creating her own dinosaur army, and this has always been one of the coolest locations in the series for me. Like, it might be kinda silly to say, like the warriors play basketball in outer space, or fight in zombie video games, but there's something about the scale and atmosphere of this ominous oil rig in the middle of a stormy sea that really stands out to me. Wuya sends a T-Rex she makes to eat the Xiaolin monks, but before she can, Chase shows up, and just Chase showing up and the dinosaur stopping in its tracks is pretty badass. Like, he's totally unfazed even when it roars at him, and I think to myself, the dinosaur wouldn't have stopped if a little bean jumped in the way. Chase turns into his fellow reptile form and uses the eagle scope to give the T-Rex intelligence, which is a very interesting choice. I feel like it could backfire pretty easily to give something so big and powerful intelligence. Like, that's the only thing it's lacking. But this gives the T-Rex a British accent, and it attacks Wuya and Jack, who narrowly escape, leading us to a showdown between the T-Rex and Raimundo. This continues the trend of Raimundo fighting the biggest, most powerful enemies throughout the show, and the showdown here is Jurassic Chess, which is really funny to me, because it reminds me of those old chess games that would just be vanilla chess with a cutscene that would play every time you play a piece. This showdown plays out more like the two are commanding the pieces to launch at the other, trying to knock each other away. The T-Rex eventually pins Raimundo between two pieces, and when all hope seems lost, Raimundo reveals this was was all part of his plan to be hit here, showing that he wasn't aiming for the T-Rex this whole time, but you know, playing chess, like the showdown intended, which gives him an easy checkmate dub. So Raimundo wins the showdown, and when we get back to the destroyed oil rig with the T-Rex stranded on a small piece, I just find it so much more funny than it should be. Like, it just catches me off guard, I don't know. They decided to be too cruel, or should I say crude, to turn the dinosaur back into oil, so they use the changing chopsticks to make the dinosaurs small, and give them a little habitat back at the temple. Like, yeah, let's just reintroduce dinosaurs back to the world. What could possibly go wrong? I actually really like this episode, and I think the switching of alliances with Wuya, Jack, and Chase is really compelling. The action and showdown are all really fun and funny too, so yeah, it's a great episode. So let's move on. Episode 46 starts with the Fancy Feet Shengon Wu showing up, which allows you to move really fast. And something about seeing the silhouette run out of the scroll is really unsettling to me. As the monks approach the Shengon Wu, they run into the stupid bean that I hate, but he summons the blind swordsman to get rid of the warriors by summoning a bat tornado that covers them in guano. Master Feng says he has no wise words for the monks on how to fight Hannibal Bean now that he has the blind swordsman, and decides he must send the monks to a new temple to train to defeat Hannibal. Dojo's desperate to stay because he's really attached to Master Feng, as we've seen from the sponge baths and everything when Master Feng was incapacitated while Omi joined the dark side. He even has a little plushie of Master Feng, and it's equal parts creepy and cute. The temple they go to ends up being Master Monk Guan's temple, and I'm still a little salty that he betrayed them all and traded Dojo for his spear. Like, I just don't trust him, I don't know. Monk Guan says at the end of their training, one of the four will be chosen to fight Hannibal Bean, and it turns out Monk Guan is extremely hardcore. The monks train on this deadly obstacle course that looks more like something from Mad Max, and Raimundo ends up giving up. This angers Monk Guan, who gives Raimundo the new name Bobo since he wants to act like a clown, and decides to no longer punish Rai when he messes up, but punishes everyone else instead. This causes Raimundo to leave the temple, and Hannibal Bean swoops in, tempting Raimundo, telling him his friends didn't stand up for him and stuff. Hannibal's mecha samurai suit is really sick, but like, we've seen Raimundo tempted by the forces of evil like 5 times in the show. If he gets tempted by evil for reals again, I'll be pretty disappointed, but I think he'll pull through. So Raimundo steals the Shengon Wu from the temple, and when Monk Guan tries to stop him, Rai says, "Out of my way, Guano Man," which makes me wonder, earlier in the episode when there was endless possibilities the blind swordsman could have summoned to stop the warriors, was the reason he summoned a bat tornado all for this guano pun now? Like, if this was intentional, I see what you did there. As Raimundo escapes with the Shengon Wu, he gets into a showdown versus Omi, who the show pokes fun at for not really having any Shengon Wu on him. He eventually pulls out the Gyoza Hamachi, and I know I've mentioned it many times before, but I love this because it's already got me thinking, what could the gills possibly do here? The showdown turns into a Xiaolin sparring competition, and Raimundo uses the Fancy Feet to move super fast, attacking Omi and knocking him into the water. Omi uses the Gyoza Hamachi, but Raimundo uses his wind powers to knock the flailing fish Omi back into the boat. As Omi suffocates, Monk Guan uses this opportunity to bet double or nothing with Hannibal, going all in on his Shengon Wu that Omi will beat Raimundo. As Raimundo's about to defeat the weakened Omi, we see him suddenly fall to the ground, pretending to be hurt and losing the showdown, thus taking away all of Hannibal's Shengon Wu. It turns out this was all a ploy between Monk Guan and Raimundo, and they couldn't let the other warriors in on the plan because they knew Hannibal was watching. Omi's sad that he wasn't the chosen one, which if you know how this show plays out, is pretty funny, because we gotta decide who the winner and loser is here. So earlier on, I might have played this a little more black and white and said Omi wins and Rai loses, because that's how it goes in the scorers table, but reflecting on this, I'm gonna score it as a win for Raimundo and a loss for Hannibal. The ending to this episode is so crazy, like I actually cannot believe it. Monk Guan gives Raimundo the Spear of Guan for how good of a job he did playing his role in being a part of the team. Now you might be thinking, didn't he give this to Omi last season? Well, Omi asks the same thing, and Monk Guan reveals he has a whole room of these spears, giving Raimundo one of his favorites, number 384. This makes Monk Guan trading Dojo for this stupid spear 100 times worse than it already was, because like, this is one spear that didn't even do anything useful, was traded for the life of a dragon, to a villain, and is extremely replaceable. Hannibal. Just insane stuff. I don't even want to think about this anymore, it just makes me sick. Let's just move on. Episode 47. This episode starts with Dojo sleeping around the neck of Monk Wan, like, Dojo, get away from this sociopath. Monk Wan senses a great evil is nearby, but nothing is found, so everyone goes back to sleep, as we see Hannibal Bean sneak into the Shengang Wu vault, disguising as a small fly. We see this giant blue jellyfish monster appear that handily defeats the warriors, except for the sleeping Raimundo, but all of a sudden, it just vanishes. Kimiko makes fun of Raimundo for showing up late when he's no longer needed, and with his teddy bear, which Raimundo argues is his lucky charm, named Ninja Fred, which I find really funny, just cause it's such a mid-2000s name. Ninja Fred. Like, it's just enough parts epic ninja, plus random, plus cool. The warriors wonder who could have summoned this monster, but assume it's Jack Spicer, who we soon learn was also attacked by this blue tentacle dragon jellyfish monster thing. Upon seeing the Jackbots have been turned into Sapphire, we learn that this monster they're facing is a combination of the Shadow of Fear and the Sapphire Dragon, and Monk Wan reveals Raimundo is actually the one behind these attacks, which I guess explains why we haven't seen the two of them in the same place at the same time. It's not Raimundo's intention, but Hannibal's taking advantage of Raimundo's fear, and every time he falls asleep, this brings back the powerful Sapphire Jellyfish, which is a nice callback to Raimundo's biggest fear, being a jellyfish in season 2. So Omi intends to keep Raimundo awake forever, throwing ice water at him while Dojo tries to psychoanalyze Rai to find the root cause of his fear. Later, Kimiko gets Rai to play Dance Dance Revolution to try to keep him awake, and Clay square dances with him. This chaos is interrupted by Dojo getting a Shengang Wu premonition, and when Kimiko stays behind to keep Raimundo awake, it's revealed this is actually Hannibal using his signature Moby Morpher to impersonate her. The new Shengang Wu is the Shadow Slicer, which can create holograms, which we find in a monkey habitat at the zoo, giving us the second episode in a row where the monks get attacked by animal poop. The Sapphire Jellyfish shows up and just annihilates a monkey, and during this chaos, we see Raimundo enter his inner mind. We see the giant arcade from when Wuya ruled the world, and Kimiko lives here. Okay. And a kid version of Raimundo appears. Hannibal tells Rai he can see his deepest fears as we see Raimundo chase his friends who only grow further away. And we begin to piece together a little bit of what Raimundo may fear specifically, but this is cut off by Omi getting into a Xiaolin Showdown with the Sapphire Jellyfish. They point out that Omi's getting into a showdown with a literal Shengang Wu, which is kind of funny, like imagine gambling against a dollar bill. But this showdown delves into Raimundo's psyche as we see Hannibal push Rai, recollecting how he joined the dark side and betrayed his friends, and how he was the last to be promoted to apprentice, and it seems ultimately Raimundo's scared of being scared, as well as not being strong enough to lead or help his friends. Raimundo fights Hannibal inside his psyche along with his inner self, and we even see Raimundo use the Wudai form, which turns him into the Newgrounds looking silhouette form. Raimundo teams up with his child self and ultimately knocks Hannibal out of his head, getting rid of him and the Sapphire Dragon Jellyfish, winning the showdown. I think it's really interesting for Raimundo's character to show his inner self and his fear of competing with the others, because while Raimundo's powerful and undisciplined, he's never been fearful, even when maybe he should have been, like against Mala Mala Jung in season 1. I think it's a really sweet touch and revelation about Raimundo, but I think the episode is kinda dull overall. It almost feels like it'd be better if they combined the last episode where Raimundo pretends to betray everyone, with this episode where Raimundo fights his fears of inadequacy, but they're really putting a lot of focus on Raimundo lately, so keep that in mind, and let's move on. Episode 48 starts with the Kazusu Atom being revealed, which allows the user to vaporize their enemies. Dojo gets distracted by a call from Master Feng, who asks Dojo why he's been blowing up his phone and answering machine. Dojo tells Master Feng he misses him, but notices a new dragon in Feng's temple, which obviously causes Dojo to freak out that he's being cheated on. A different dragon is selling Shengang Wu to a bunch of villains in an alleyway, and they're obviously fake, as we see he pretends Jack Spicer's invisible using his new bootleg Shroud of Shadows. The warriors fight Jack on this waterfall for the Kazusu Atom, and it's actually pretty cool. Jack has these dolphin bots, and we see them get lassoed and thrown into each other and explode. Jack even uses the new bootleg Shingon Woos he got, which obviously don't work, but they soon realize they're all about to fall down this giant waterfall. Omi uses his water powers to freeze the waterfall in place, which is kind of funny to me because I'd assume ice would do this better than water, but yeah, I guess he just applies an equal but opposite force to the waterfall to keep it still or something, and the monks fly off. But not before sending Jack down the waterfall. Back at the temple, they encounter the con artist dragon, who tells the monks he's homeless and broke and hungry, so they take him in, and we get a very funny callback here. Last season, when Omi and Germain were fighting, Dojo told them a story about how him and his best friend had a falling out over Dojo's prized family yo-yo. And here we find out this dragon is the ex-best friend in question, Chucky Chu, not to be confused with Chucky Chan.
Here comes Chucky Chan.
Here comes Chucky Chan.
He's always ready when there's danger at hand.
Dojo takes a bath with a Master Feng rubber ducky, okay, and Chucky comes in to say he found Dojo's family yo-yo. Dojo's so happy he hugs Chucky, causing him to fall into the tub, and the monks walk in and see the two dragons hugging in the tub, causing everyone to watch in shock and horror, except Omi, who really loves this. Something about Omi's reaction is like one of the funniest moments of the season for me, I don't know why. Before Chucky can come clean about his con artist ways, Jack, Wuya, and the Cyclops hold Dojo and Chucky hostage until they get some real Shingon Wu to make up for Chucky's scam. As the villains approach the temple, the monks try to use their new Wudai weapons, but they've been replaced with fakes by Chucky. In the ensuing chaos, Dojo gets knocked into the Shingon Wu vault Wuya's raiding, and we get a Xiaolin Showdown between Dojo and Wuya. Although Dojo has no Shingon Wu, according to the rules, a mystical dragon can compete in a showdown Wu-less as long as they don't have a criminal record. Dojo nervously laughs, saying he has no convictions, and like, I don't even want to know what Dojo might have done. Wuya says the game will be Shaolin Pinball, which I find really odd, because Wuya didn't even know what air hockey was. Why would she know, let alone choose, pinball for a showdown? We see them turn into pinballs like they ate that candy from Mario Party 8, and oh my god, this showdown is literally unwatchable. Like, I've actually gone through a lot of scenes so far in this review and clipped out segments of flashing lights, because this is by far one of the most obnoxious shows for people with photosensitivity issues. But this showdown takes it to another level. Like, Electric Soldier Porygon is mild in comparison. Here's a video of the episode from my iPad across the room so you don't have an epileptic seizure. So Wuya wins the showdown somehow, don't ask me how, I literally can't even make sense of what's happening. And Wuya tries to use the newly won Kazusu Atom against Dojo, but this ends up unintentionally vaporizing all the other Shingon Wu, causing Wuya to run off. As the villains leave, Chucky reveals the Shingon Wu she vaporized were all bootlegs, and he hid all the real Shingon Wu in Dojo's nose using the changing chopsticks. So all is well that ends well, I guess, cause now the monks have most of their Shingon Wu back, and the villains won't bother them for the others cause they don't know they have them. Despite the showdown being just awful to try to watch, it's a pretty decent episode, and it's a fun callback to see Dojo's friend he mentioned before. Chucky becomes the temple dragon of Monk Guan's temple, and that's a great combo for me, the traitor who endangered Dojo's life, and the con artist that betrayed Dojo. They're really made for each other, aren't they? Fortunately, Dojo doesn't have to stay at this cursed temple any longer, and Dojo makes Master Feng promise to never make him leave ever again. So let's move on. In episode 49, the Denchi Bunny is a new Shingon Wu that allows the user to turn into electricity. Omi grabs the Shingon Wu, decapitating Jack Spicer, who we soon see was just a robot of Jack Spicer this whole time. Back at the temple, they find out Jack used this robot as a diversion to steal the Shingon Wu from the temple vault instead. Jack not only has bots, but the Shadow Slicer to create clones of himself, escaping with all the Shingon Wu. So I guess we'll list this as a win for Jack and a loss for the Shaolin Warriors. Master Feng gives the monks new weapons and tells them they'll need to use these with their new Wudai weapons to absorb and master their elements. Master Feng also says the mastery of this will be critical in determining who becomes the new Shaolin leader. We see Omi train his water element tirelessly, becoming one with his Shingon Wu and element, turning the water into all kinds of shapes and forms. this. As Omi takes a nap, stupid bean that I hate crawls into Omi's ear and tells Omi's ego to not only master his own element and powers, but also his friends. So Omi uses all 4 of the weapons, basically becoming Avatar the Last Airbender. But this new power backfires, causing Omi to become some walking magnet lightning rod, destroying everything within his radius. So Omi says maybe he should go away for a little bit while his powers die down, so we already know how this is gonna go. Omi leaves the temple for the greater good, and Hannibal Bean is gonna step in and exploit his hurt feelings. Master Feng says the way to cure Omi is by getting the Sphere of Yoon and confining Omi, but this Shengon Wu is currently held by Jack, so the monks break into Jack's lair, but he's not there. We do, however, see a video of Jack getting the plan from Hannibal Bean to raid the Shaolin Temple while they fight for the Denshi Bunny earlier in this episode, leading us to the most insane line in the whole show. Like, I'm not even exaggerating, we've had crazy lines like the sweet baby among us and stuff, but just listen to this.
That's brilliant! Why didn't I think of it?
My guess, an extra chromosome. Now bring me the following Shengon Wu.
Did Hannibal Bean just say Jack Spicer has an extra chromosome, like he has Down syndrome? Cause that's insane. I already hate this stupid bean for just being a stupid bean, but now he's really gotta go. We see Hannibal turn Jack into a zombie, stealing the Sphere of Yoon and capturing Omi with it. Hannibal harnesses Omi's immense energy to power up the zombie Jacks, but the Shaolin monks show up and take out the zombie horde with their new element powers. Raimundo passes Omi the Denshi Bunny, allowing him to become electricity just before a lightning bolt hits him. Thanks to this save, Omi and Hannibal have a fight in the sky as pure energy, as we see Omi unsuccessfully use all 4 elements to attack Hannibal. The other Shaolin monks support Omi, telling him to stop trying to use everyone's element and to believe in himself, which leads him to finally focus on his element of water, giving him the strength and focus to defeat Hannibal in a pretty epic sequence of events. Like, it feels very much like the climax to an anime how this fight goes. Hannibal flies off, giving Omi the win here, and overall it's a decent episode. Like, we've gotten the plots before of Omi leaving the temple or biting off more than he can chew, but the action sequence at the end was actually pretty sick, and I like how it's framed as Omi finally focusing on what only he can do. So let's move on. Episode 50. This episode starts with all the monks sparring with each other, and while I think the whole show looks great, this season in particular has such strong animation and fight sequences. Kimiko defeats the others, which she does in part by using the changing chopsticks on the mind reader conch and connecting it to her PDA. Omi thinks of course she's cheating, that's the only way a girl could beat us, to which Dojo says skill issue, so base Dojo. Later, Kimiko combines the Ayadashi with her PDA setup to hack into a satellite and read everyone's thoughts. I don't really understand the science behind this, but we look into the other monks' heads and see Omi feels bad for everyone who's not him, Clay reminisces about juggling pigs, and Raimundo dreams of scoring the winning soccer goal. And understandably, everyone's annoyed at Kimiko. Kimiko's surprised or upset that she did this, which is kinda crazy, but she says she plans to use this to spy on evil. We see Wuya admiring herself in a mirror, saying she looks pretty good for 1500 years old, and considering all the comments last video on human Wuya, I'd say a lot of people agree. We also see Chase is still really annoyed by Wuya's antics, and Jack's trying to create bubble shields around his robots. Also, Hannibal Bean likes to sleep under his bird, which is seen as really weird by the monks, but I don't know, it looks really cozy to me. A new Shengon Wu reveals itself, Ants in the Pants, which the monks easily get from Jack, thanks in large part to Kimiko's invention, giving a win to the warriors and a loss to Jack. Back at the temple, Hannibal spies on Kimiko, revealing Chase's plan to get rid of Wuya, focusing on his true foe, Hannibal Bean. And it's kinda funny though, cause Hannibal could have found this out by just spying on Chase instead. Hannibal Bean uses this new information he learned from spying on Kimiko to create an alliance with Wuya, and we learn that they can't allow Chase or Hannibal to get the next Shengon Wu, or they'll become far too powerful. So Raimundo comes up with the idea to get Jack to win the showdown instead, which I honestly don't understand. Why make Jack win instead of just winning yourselves? So the monks find Jack and tell him they surrender to his awesomeness, and even show him a fake video they recorded where they impersonate all the villains gassing Jack up, and I particularly love the Hannibal Bean finger puppet.
Spicer has taken his martial arts skills to a new level. Dojo, get out of the shot!
He is truly evil incarnate.
A new Shengon Wu is revealed, and with only 2 episodes left after this, I think even the show is kind of running out of steam with the new Shengon Wu.
The cannon blaster acts like a cannon that blasts.
Duh. Anyway, the holder can literally turn into a human cannibal.
The monks watch as Wuya and Hannibal fight Chase, as Jack also butts in. It's pretty interesting the monks use Jack to do their bidding, but despite their best efforts, Jack gets knocked out, and they use the treasure of the blind swordsman to turn Kimiko into Jack temporarily. This eventually leads us to a showdown trio between Kimiko impersonating Jack, Chase Young, and Hannibal Bean. The challenge in question is to be the last person remaining on these cliffs. Kimiko Jack uses the mind reader conscious powers to pit Hannibal and Chase against each other, and they're so distracted that Kimiko Jack easily knocks the 2 of them off the cliff, winning the showdown. This impresses Wuya and Chase says he's rarely surprised and never fooled. I have no idea what this means. Does he know Jack is actually Kimiko here and just doesn't care? I mean, he compliments Jack's perfume here though, but like, I don't know, just accept your loss for once, Chase. Stop coming up with all these scrub quotes. So yeah, it's an interesting episode, and this tension between all the villains sets us up really well for the finale of the show, a 2-episode special called Time After Time. So episode 51 is called Time After Time Part 1, and we're introduced to the Mikado arm Shengon Wu, which gives the holder upper body strength. As they fight Jack Spicer through the scaffolding of a skyscraper in construction, Dojo reminds them all that he'll be keeping score here for the new leader of the Warriors. They all effortlessly beat Jack, even going as far as to see who can hurt him the most for bonus points. Back at the temple, they all bring Master Feng a piece of Jack Spicer, like his boot or his belt, his hair, even his underwear. Omi, we've been over this. Master Feng tells the warriors they'll all come up with their own final quest to determine the new leader. All 4 of them end up spying on each other to give them ideas for their own quest, but in this chaos, they see Chase and Wuya out in the courtyard. They look like the couple that approaches you at the bar and tells you they like your vibes or something. They steal a bunch of their Shengon Wu, so I guess I gotta give this as a win to Chase and Wuya. Omi's idea for his quest is to go back in time to prevent Chase from ever becoming evil. So Omi freezes himself in Dojo for 80 years until they can get the Sands of Time, which will appear in the year 2085, which is actually closer to present day than I'd like to imagine. When they thaw, we see the future is overrun by Jack's robots, and Omi and Dojo are thrown into prison. Here they bump into the elderly versions of Kimiko, Raimundo, and Clay, who reveal the world was imprisoned by Jack, in part because Omi abandoned them when he froze himself. We see Jack has a kind of Roman Colosseum set up where lions will attack and humiliate someone, but instead of ripping them apart, I guess they kinda just rip their clothes off, and we see them tear the clothes off the mime. A callback all the way to episode 2, which is really funny to see. The episode ends with Omi using the Shengon Wu dojo smuggled into the prison, using the changing chopsticks to steal the Sands of Time from Jack and transport himself back 1500 years, with a lot of help thanks to elderly Kimiko, Raimundo, and Clay, who are implied to be stomped by a giant robot as Omi transports back to the past, which is really dark. Like, the stakes have never been higher than they are here, since the lives of Omi's friends are on the line now. Back in the past, we see Wuya's fight with Master Dashi, but this time we get a really cool reveal that it's not just Dashi fighting Wuya, but also Monk Guan and Chase Young, which is such a cool addition to their lore and backstories. So we end the episode here, leading us into the final episode of Xiaolin Showdown, where we'll see if Omi can successfully prevent Chase Young from joining the side of evil, stop Jack Spicer from taking over, get back to the present, and we'll see who gets promoted to group leader. And before I move on, just a gentle reminder to like and subscribe, and let me know what other shows you want me to cover in the future. You can support me on Patreon and Ko-fi if you want, and let's move on to the final episode. Episode 52. So Omi goes back to the past and tries to fight Chase Young, I guess out of habit, because he doesn't put together Chase Young isn't evil yet here. The 2 of them take out Wuya's golems, and Omi devises a plan to ensure Chase Young doesn't become evil. We see Hannibal Bean gives Chase the Soup of Immortality, and Omi takes this and hides it in a temple wall, replacing it with a pea soup. When Chase Young drinks the newly replaced pea soup, this causes Chase to revoke his allegiance to evil. Omi uses the sands of time to go back to the present, and we see Monk Guan is now on the Heilun side. Before Monk Guan and Wuya can defeat Omi, Chase Young, who's a good guy in this timeline, saves Omi, escaping back to the Xiaolin monks' hideout. They don't live at the temple anymore, but a mud farm, because while Omi saved Chase, this lets Hannibal move on to lure Monk Guan to the dark side. I suppose this means Monk Guan is more powerful than Chase with his Heilun powers of evil, which is interesting. Like, maybe it's because Chase Young is never actually that evil to begin with, and we see his honor throughout the show, as opposed to Monk Guan, who I think is actually evil, which would make a lot of sense because as we've seen so far, he trades Dojo for one of his hundreds of spears. I will never get over this. Clay is the leader in this timeline, which is pretty funny because if they just live on a farm now, who could possibly be a better leader? Omi convinces the others that he comes from an alternate dimension where Chase is evil, and he even proves it by revealing the evil Lao Mong tea Hannibal being offered Chase and Guan. So the plan is to find the frozen Omi in the Shingon Wu Vault and defrost him, preventing that Omi from freezing himself, abandoning his friends, and causing Jack's uprising, which I guess would also prevent the timeline where Monk Guan becomes evil. The four Shaolin monks, Dojo, Good Chase Young, along with the good Jack Spicer are here, and they get trapped by this timeline's villain alliance of Wuya, Hannibal, and Guan. Chase Young makes one of the largest sacrifices we see in the show, drinking the evil potion so he can power up enough to break them out, allowing Raimundo to lead the heroes to the frozen Omi and fix their timeline. In the ensuing chaos, good Jack Spicer distracts the big cats, which are Monk Guan's now, giving the monks a moment to find the frozen Omi. As soon as they find the frozen Omi, we see Monk Guan, Wuya, and now Chase Young in his reptile form approach, but Jack Spicer falls down here, allowing Raimundo and Hannibal Bean to dive for the Eye of Dashi, resulting in a final showdown, a 4-on-4 relay race up the side of a castle to save the damsel in distress, which is actually just Dojo. This showdown's really cool and very fitting for the finale of the show, because we all have these individual little fights and parkour moments. And we see the characters swap in and out for each other, really emphasizing all the teamwork they've built up every episode of the show so far. The showdown starts with Raimundo running up the castle wall, only for Hannibal to break off the rock Raimundo was on, and just before he falls into the gator-infested moat below, Raimundo switches out with Clay, who uses his Boa Boa lasso to swing back up to safety. When Kimiko switches in, we see all four villains are now fighting at once, which is obviously cheating, and Raimundo starts giving all four villains the business at once, which goes so crazy. Wuya even summons her stone gargoyles, taking the upper hand and knocking Raimundo away. But in the final moments of the showdown, Raimundo uses the cannon blaster, combining it with his Wudai wind element to become this ball of lightning that knocks out Wuya's golems along with Wuya, Guan, Hannibal, and Chase. Raimundo then punches Hannibal off the castle, passing the baton to Omi, who uses the Orbitornami to create a waterfall he rides up the side of the crumbling castle with, which is just a really nice touch to finish the showdown off, using arguably the most iconic Shengon Wu in the series. Also, this sequence looks amazing. There's such a huge sense of scale, and we even see Omi save the crumbling castle by freezing the mountain solid, as the Princess Dojo jumps into Omi's arms. The flower effect that plays here is so funny to me for some reason, like it's not very fitting, which kinda makes it perfect in some weird way. I love this shot of the villains watching after they all lost, like they're squatted up, like this looks like a Fortnite team right here. And we even see Chase Young smile, perhaps to show us that he's come around to the side of good, or is at least warming up to it now. Back at the temple, Master Feng announces who the leader is, now that this quest is over, and the new leader of the Shaolin monks is Raimundo. And all I gotta say is, wow, this is such an amazing twist for me, because Raimundo has by far the most development of the four monks, and is always portrayed as a powerful yet edgy character, rivaling Omi throughout the series. Sure, he does the most negative things, like betraying the others, and always has a chip on his shoulder, but Raimundo learns to cooperate as a team player, whereas Omi doesn't really develop past his large ego much throughout the show. However, we see Omi pretty emotional that Raimundo was chosen, but swallows his pride, smiling and congratulating his friend on his promotion. When I think back to this show and how everyone loses a lot, and how I think that's cool, this ending is no exception, cause I'm so used to the protagonist winning everything. Like, I can't think of many shows where the heroes lose, but I also can't think of many that end with a side character getting promoted to a higher level than the protagonist. And while this might not be where the show intended to end, it's still a very bold choice that embodies the spirit of the show, that not everything will go the way the protagonists expect. Perhaps to also show their growth isn't linear. We end the episode, as well as the series, with every villain we've seen throughout the show posted up outside the temple, almost as if to celebrate everyone we've seen so far. The monks run outside with a smile on their faces as they leap into action, and this is such a satisfying ending for the show to me. There's a couple things a fourth or final season could wrap up, like Chase becoming good again, or if Omi will be promoted to the same or higher rank as Raimundo now. Will Omi ever find his family? And there's even rumors that Jack Spicer was planned to be the 5th dragon, with his element being metal, which would have been really cool since Jack's also hinted to be good several times throughout the show. But regardless of this, I'm still so happy with how the show ends, and as much as I love it, I don't feel like the ending left me snubbed and needing more in order to be satisfied. Overall, I don't like Hannibal Bean nearly as much as Chase as a character or as an antagonist to the season. Hannibal doesn't really add much complexity to the show, but I appreciate learning more about Chase's backstory and the origins of Chase's evil. This makes me kinda see Hannibal more as a plot device though. Like, I'd love to know his backstory. Why is he a bean? Chase added a lot of tension to the show with his schemes, even when he lost intentionally for some kind of bigger picture, and I find Chase was a lot more intimidating than Hannibal, like how Chase would effortlessly defeat the monks in combat, hardly lifting a finger sometimes. So let's get into our final win-loss results for Season 3 and Xiaolin Showdown as a whole. Scoring for the 5 main characters first, in 5th place this season with a record of 2 and 4 is Jack Spicer. Jack is really not involved as much this season in showdowns, which is understandable since Hannibal, Chase, and even Wuya are all competing. The few times Jack does fight, it wouldn't make as much sense plot-wise for Jack to win here, so it's understandable he only has a record of 2 and 4. In 4th place is Clay with a record of 5 and 3. This is the second time we've had a positive win record so far, the first being when Omi came in first place at the end of the last season, and while Clay didn't really get many unique opportunities outside of Season 1, he's still one of my favorite characters. With Omi, Kimiko, and Raimundo left, 2nd and 3rd place are actually a tie. At 7 wins and 3 losses, we have Kimiko and Omi. This is a significant jump up in the standings for Kimiko, and I think she continued to innovate, winning her showdown against Wuya or making her PDA able to read minds. She really became one of the most powerful characters, which is really cool. On the other hand, this is the first season where Omi doesn't come in first place, but with a record of 7 and 3, despite this drop in standings, this is Omi's highest winning percentage season at 70%. This is cool and all, but this leaves only Raimundo remaining at 8 and 3. I've said before, Raimundo was far better than his record the past couple seasons, since he often had really strong wins against powerful opponents, and this season is no exception. Fighting the T-Rex that's now gains intelligence, or single-handedly knocking out the 4 villains in the finale. Raimundo deserves his promotion at the end of the show, not just because of his development, but because he has the strongest record of any monk. Side characters don't have any real notable stats this season, because most characters just have 1 win or loss, like Dojo is 0-1, Monk Juan is 0-1. Really, the main anomaly of side characters is Hannibal Bean at 0 wins and 6 losses. I think that kind of speaks to my point of him not being a very threatening villain, and if he ever won this season, I might have respected him a bit more. The overall standings keep Omi in first place, with the only win percentage over 50, but Clay falls down to last place now, making him the biggest loser and the weakest link, but he's still the GOAT in our hearts. Thanks so much for watching. I'd love to know your thoughts on this series and video. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.